What if everything you've ever been told about retirement is completely wrong? Utter BS. I'm serious, you know, that whole idea of the golden years that our parents had. 40 years of work, the gold watch, the guaranteed pension, and then stop. Just endless days of golf and fishing. What if that entire old school retirement playbook is now officially, and I think we can call it now, obsolete? What if following that old advice about what retirement is meant to be is the riskiest thing that us Gen Xers can do? The world of retirement has definitely changed. There's no argue about that. But the old standard advice when it comes to retirement certainly hasn't. So I think if you're in your 50s or maybe early 60s, or just thinking about retirement in general, we're the generation, and it's no coincidence it's Generation X, that gets to write an entirely new script. In fact, no, has to write a brand new script. And honestly, I think that new script can be a hell of a lot more fun than that old, boring, dusty retirement script that existed before. It's time to tear up the old rule book. And I'm going to present an alternative approach to retirement in 2026 and beyond. So yeah, the gold watch era is officially dead. I got a slice of cake and a book token. Let's be honest about the world our parents retired in versus the one that we're looking at now. Or if you're like me, you've just early retired. I see some nice, comfortable folk in their 70s around where I live, driving around in brand new big cars. I'm talking Beamers or big Land Rovers and stuff like that. And I think, okay, they're very well off for pensioners. And no, I don't know their backstory, but I bet their pensions and opportunities were aplenty. Rich boomers who could afford to buy a house on a modest income 50 years ago, and then that house is now worth millions years later. Good company pensions, finely salary pension schemes, etc. I mean, I don't resent them. I know it sounds like I do. I don't resent them. It's just the circumstances and the time that they were born into and started working into. Like the Japanese bubble period, you know, the only way was up. And then the 90s came along and it all popped. And they called the 90s the era of the lost decade. The same here. We never had it so good in the early 90s and maybe the early 2000s. And then the 2018 crash, the age of austerity, which has been forced upon us by mismanaged economic philosophies. Our parents' generation, they had a deal, yeah? They showed loyalty to a company, and in return, the company gave them security for life. The biggest prize in the deal, that defined benefit pension scheme, a guaranteed check every single month for the rest of their lives. And look, full exposure here, I have a defined benefits pension scheme, and I know I am super, super lucky. But even that scheme changed during my working life as they tried to sort of ditch it and get rid of it slowly but surely by watering it down. It went from a final salary scheme to a kind of career average scheme. And to be honest, because I retired early, it's not a lot. Because the other thing is I didn't have a guarantee that my company would have to offer me a pension. So for the first 10 years of my career, I really didn't have a pension scheme. It was optional when I started. And when you're young, foolish and crazy, you'd rather have the money in your pocket. But those DB pensions are few and far between now because they're just too expensive to maintain for companies who are just concentrating on paying dividends to their shareholders rather than rewarding their staff, who are, of course, absolutely disposable. So yeah, I am one of the lucky few. But other than that, when was the last time you heard of someone our age getting one of those? The entire system, that gold watch era, it's gone. It's a relic. Today, the burden of saving, investing, and figuring it all out by yourself is 100% on you. So the do-it-yourself model replaced the pension. And to help us, the experts gave us these sort of simple, catchy rules, right? Yeah? Number one, you know, just save $1 million and you'll be set. Brilliant, thanks for that. Or rule 2, just use the 4% rule. Yeah, pull out 4% a year of your investments and you'll never run out of money. Brilliant. I see loads of videos like, is 500k enough for retirement? Blimey, not even my so-called generous pension scheme was worth that much. There are hundreds of pension advice YouTubers out there because, well, there are hundreds of pension options and approaches you can take, and everybody's very, very different in their circumstances. So, yeah, I'll leave all of that to the experts. I'm not a financial expert. You can see my video about the 60% tax bracket hitting me. The thing is, it's nearly 2026, and we're all looking at all this advice and thinking, what? That $1 million dream we were all sold. I was looking into some research, and it turns out that in today's world in the US, a $1 million nest egg might only spin off about $35,000 a year. $35,000, that's about 30 grand after a lifetime of saving, a whole lifetime of savings. That's not going to fund 30 years of adventure, is it? Because you've got to factor in the tax after that. The cost of living seems to be rapidly increasing, especially in the UK. And in the UK, the pension companies suggest a reasonable income for a nice retirement is around 31k. So before tax, you've got to earn 38k a year for the next 30 years. That's some pension pot you're going to have to sustain. Then there's the state pension. And if this wasn't a sign that the old retirement rules are fading away, I don't know what is. But countries around the world are looking to extend the age at which they start paying out that state pension because they just can't afford it. There's not enough young people to pay for the old people as people live longer. It's a massive burden on governments to maintain, especially when you're in an economic turndown. What politician would be crazy enough to take money from pensioners right now? For example, in Japan, the state pension isn't all that good, and they tend to live longer than we do in the West. So you see loads of older folks still working. I saw a YouTube interview with this 90-year-old woman, right, in Japan, and for 50 years, she's still working in a little tiny shop in Akihabara next to another 90-year-old guy selling electronics parts in his little market stall shop under Akihabara. I saw some 70-plus-year-olds sweeping the streets of Tokyo. I mean, with real pride, because this is a Japanese thing. They were completely focused on just tidying that pavement. This was paid for work by the sort of town hall. They had a uniform and everything. It wasn't just random old folk deciding to tidy up the street. And all because they needed more money to live, because they're living longer. And all with this added effect of the Japanese gamen, that kind of spirit of will to keep going. They just quietly swept the streets with real pride in their work as the world continued on around them. And that's the real problem. We're all living longer, which is fantastic, of course. Yay! But we're also dealing with the kind of rising cost of living, the kind of inflation getting out of hand, governments mismanaging the economy. So that old set it and forget it plan when it comes to pensions and retirement is done. It's a recipe for running out of money, and even worse, running out of confidence. But you know what? The money is only half the story. To me, the biggest flaw in the script is what I call the cliff edge. It's this idea that you work full tilt, 100 miles an hour, 60 hours a week, whatever, right up until your 65th birthday. You're the boss, you're the expert, and then on a Friday or a Monday, you just stop forever. It sounds amazing, for like the first 2 weeks, like a 2-week vacation, right? But for the next 30 years, what happens to your identity, your purpose, that social connection you got from work every single day, even if you griped about it, yeah? For a lot of people, that cliff edge retirement is a real shock to the system. And they go from that initial honeymoon phase of that first few weeks of retirement feeling like a vacation to then suddenly feeling a bit bored, lost, or even useless. I knew a bloke once who used to be a truck driver most of his life, drove trucks for a food company. And then, he retired. But he's one of these guys who he had to be busy. He was always busy, had to be busy. He didn't know how to switch off. So he used to come round and said, "Do you want me to do your garden for you?" And every week, he was my kid's grandfather, but every week he would come round and he would just do my garden because he had to be busy. He had to be doing something. And hey, win-win, it suited him, it suited me. Because without that little work, without him having a focus, he just kind of felt a bit rudderless, a bit lost. So that's not an adventure, that's a void. And on this channel, Level 50 Lifestyle, please like and subscribe and all of that. We don't talk about voids, we're all about what's next in your life. If that old, broken 20th century script is done and finished, what's our new script? What's next for Gen X, yeah? This is the exciting part, always is. I always like to bring a bit of optimism to my videos eventually. First, we're rejecting the cliff edge, okay? And we're replacing it with the glide path. No sudden stop. We just glide into retirement. And second, we're not retiring in that old sense. We're embracing what's called the Encore career, yeah? And an Encore career isn't just a job. It's work that you do, maybe part-time, that gives you three crucial things in life. Maybe a paycheck, which solves that idealistic problem of having to earn at least £31,000 a year from your pension. Personal meaning, which means you solve that void problem. And social connection, and a way to contribute, which solves the problem of who am I now? It's the ultimate solution. It fixes the financial gaps and the psychological gaps all at the same time. And you might just be saying, well, what's the point if you're not retiring, you're just getting another job? But it's finding a job or a purpose that will pay you, even if it's only part-time, so that you slowly transition from working in a dead-end job you don't like to anymore, from just working maybe 3 days a week or something that's easy, not stressful, and allows you to start enjoying a part-time retired life. Ultimately, this glide path can look like anything you want it to. That's the beauty of it, yeah? You get to write the rules. Maybe for you it is semi-retirement. You go to your boss and you say, look, I'm done with the 60-hour grind. You can stuff that. But I've got 30 years of wisdom. How about I work 20 hours a week? I'll mentor the new people. I'll handle the interesting projects. But I'm out the door at 2 p.m, yeah? Or maybe it's a side hustle or gig work. You spent 30 years, getting amazing at, say, woodworking or graphic design or coaching or baking or managing spreadsheets. Why not turn that passion or expertise into your own little thing? I know a guy who's an expert in databases and wrote a manual for some database software. So now he just consults maybe 2 or 3 times a week as he eases into sort of retirement life. This gig economy isn't just for 20-somethings. It's perfect for us. We have the skills that they don't. There's so many ways to make money as a side hustle. Yeah, look, this YouTube channel coughs up a little bit of money on the side, for me, and I've replanned my finances accordingly. The internet offers so many opportunities for a side hustle nowadays. I have a friend of mine who recorded his voice into AI and put it into an AI library. He's got this lovely Radio 4 type voice, beautiful British voice, British accent, nice radio type voice. And now anytime anyone uses that voice in the AI library, he gets some pennies from it. And let's just say several million people have used his lovely British accent. And he's making money on the side and he doesn't have to do anything. Or maybe it's a passion project, yeah? That just happens to pay. You've always wanted to work in a bookstore or a garden centre or consult on your own terms. Now you can. It's not about the old school career ladder. It's about finding work that feels like play, which is what we should have done in the first place when we started our career, but rarely do. Basically, you're looking to slowly transition into retirement. It's funny when it comes to part-time work. I mentioned the old Japanese folks sweeping the streets. When I was younger, I remember the local DIY stores, if in the UK, I think it was B&Q or something like that. They started employing retirees, mostly men, because who better than to advise on a DIY projects than an old dad or an old granddad? Because remember, your dad or your granddad, they seem to know how to fix anything. Who better to have wandering the aisles of B&Q or your DIY store when you need some advice, rather than a spotty teenager who's never changed a plug in his life? And trust me, they used to take great pride in telling you how to kind of do some plumbing or put up a picture or something like that. When my dad was made redundant in his late 50s, he was like a senior sales exec. He just felt that it was like a young man's game and he just couldn't get another job. We were in a bit of recession at the time. He ended up getting a job in a stationery. I tell you what, he used to come home sometimes and tell me with immense pride how he just sold this guy a pen, yeah? It didn't matter what he was selling. He was using his sales skills, whether it was a pen, a pencil, some nice thick paper for the printer. He took a real passion in selling. So the point is, we're not stopping, we're reallocating, yeah? We're shifting from a life that was 100% about work to a kind of new, flexible hybrid of meaningful work, lifelong learning, and prioritizing amazing experiences. As I said, the 20th century model of retirement is dead. It was built for a world that doesn't exist anymore, for a life that was 20 years shorter. Our parents' script is obsolete. And you know what? This is fantastic news. It's fantastic because we're not being forced into that one-size-fits-all cliff edge box, yeah? We get to design our own futures. There's some smart people at Stanford Center on Longevity. They call this the new map of life. It's not a straight line of learn, work, retire. It's a flexible, circular path where you can learn, work, flex, take a sabbatical, learn something new, start an Encore career. You get to choose. This isn't an on-off switch anymore. It's more like a dimmer switch to our life. We're just dimming the have to work and turning up the want to work bit. And that's the adventure. So this is the fun part. I want to know from you, what is your Encore career idea? Your kind of glide path? What's the passion project you've been dreaming of? How are you rewriting your retirement script and all of that? Drop it in the comments down below. Let's get the conversation started and share some ideas. And as ever, if you like this video, then please hit the likes because I like it, YouTube likes it, and it helps people like you find content just like this. And if you're new to my channel, then do me the great honor, please hit that subscribe button, toggle that notification bell, and that way you'll know when I go live with videos just like this. And talking of videos just like this, why don't you check out the videos here, right here. Thanks for watching.